Hmm. Wow, I'm still waking up. So yesterday, Qigong master or Qigong grandmaster Chun Yilin released his new book, The Enlightenment Promise, and it's about the Heart Sutra, and it looks really awesome. He goes like basically it's a in-depth discussion of the Heart Sutra. And um he said he's been working on the book for 15 years, and I found a talk from him on YouTube on the Heart Sutra that's like at least 10 years old. But I remember him talking about the Heart Sutra back in 2005, I think. No, 2015. That's 10 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, um basically he had this deep experience. Actually, then okay, so somebody's been reading my blog, apparently from Singapore, but who knows, but I keep getting um clicks on my blog, somebody checking out like various aspects of my blog from Singapore. One of the things they checked out was this alchemy book I had posted by a professor and a Taoist practitioner. Uh, can't remember her name like off the top of my head. I'll give a link to it, but I did a blog post on it. And so basically I was reviewing this book again just because I review what other people review on my blogs. Like it inspires me to like gives me an excuse to reread what I wrote, and which is a good thing because I forget, that's the whole purpose of my blog. It's like otherwise I would totally forget all the research that I do. And sure enough, in the book, explains the secret of the heart is actually a fluid that's from the lungs. And because I'd have to reread it again because it's the Taoist alchemy stuff. It gets complicated, but essentially, um, yeah, I mean, I knew that already, but I kind of forget it. But it's in my training manual too, because when you're doing the small universe meditation, essentially you're increasing your cerebral spinal fluid, and this is what they call Amrita in alchemy. So I experienced this. This is part of what they call Bigu, which is the advanced. It's also called Nirvikalpa Samadhi in Indian yoga, but I also call it kicking off the rocket boosters. Kicking off the rocket boosters. That's my sort of my joke because when you get to this level of meditation, you're experiencing the Wan Chi and from the heart, but also the enlightenment experience, and you can see spirits or whatever. I saw ghosts, but you experience this strong force, the Wan Chi, and it actually describes that Bigu experience pretty well in the book that I link. It's in my blog link there, but essentially the Chi gets so strong that your bones get pliable, and when your bones get pliable like that, that's when you're starting to make the yang shen. And I had no idea I was you know at that level because I was too naive. I hadn't studied the book well enough to know what I had gotten into. But my whole point is like, well, we have this secret power from meditation, but we don't, as a culture, we completely have no idea because it's a lot easier to do when you're younger. Because the whole point, like this fluid from the heart, I mean, that's the cerebral spinal fluid. It's connected to obviously to celibacy, and that's what that book describes. Because the yang energy is hidden in the water of the kidneys, and you need the liver to then increase it. And it's yeah, it's the liver is like it turns into righteous anger if it's not wisdom. Like the wisdom is green energy, and the wisdom is actually the wan chi of the green dragon. But normally with your eyes open, you have the red dragon, which is anger, and that's why uh, Master Nanhua Chen, he basically says that in one of his books, he mentions, well, you shouldn't even really meditate in modern times right now because the dharma on earth is so bad that you'll just get righteous anger, and and the righteous anger is basically a reaction from the low frequency, or if you want to call it low frequency, but just this out of touch with the emptiness around you. And so you could see why the highest level of Shaolin is this meditation alchemy training, because you basically do have to fight off all the lower frequency energy around you in order to maintain that high level. Um, but with the Qigong master, they just charge a lot of money. If you charge a lot of money, then you can protect yourself, because most people, they're not going to want to pay that money for something they don't believe in, unless they're like super desperate and they really want help. And um which is what I've done with the Qigong masters. It's like, okay, well, now I really need the Qigong masters help, so I'm gonna call them up to get long distance healing. And I've done that before for helping out family member, or my mom needed healing and stuff. And um yeah, so what I've been doing is studying science to reverse engineer meditation. And one of the fascinating things about science is it assumes, oh, well, Chen Yilin, he gave a talk yesterday to launch his book. And I ordered his book, as I mentioned in that blog post that I did. And one of the things he says is that the information in meditation is like, I don't know what he says, like 100,000 times faster than the speed of light. And um I mean, they have done studies where they have actually documented superluminal information, and that's what he's referring to. But the other thing about non-locality in the emptiness is that it has it's instantaneous. The spooky action at a distance, that was the Bell's inequality that got the Nobel Prize like 2 years ago. That's actually instantaneous, and not even the speed, because to have speed, you have to assume you're defining foundation reality as distance, because that's how speed's measured. Um, so like in the calculus, they have time change over time, and but they're actually, when they say time, they really mean distance. They don't like, and then eventually, when you get into like relativity, then they say, well, time doesn't exist. But in non-commutativity, what you're relying is a discrete non-locality. And when you have a discrete um, instantaneous like overlap, that's where you get into these logical paradoxes that they call quantum logic. And that quantum logic is the same logical paradoxes that's used in Eastern philosophy. With the Zen quones, as they're called. The quones. Um, yeah. So That's what, like, Jim Nance, Qigong master Jim Nance, he moved to Minneapolis in 1978 in order to study Zen meditation, to practice Zen meditation, which is really wild, you know. And then he did music, and then he got into Qigong in '95. And so anyway, the I started studying the Zen koans. Uh, I have this weird memory of reading Zen koans at my original house I grew up in. This big old Victorian, like kind of like a mansion house. Um, when I was in high school, I have this weird memory of reading the Master Nanhua Chin's Chinese meditation book um, when I was in high school. And I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's something my mind just kind of like created because it's a nice memory. It must be, I don't know, it must be something I just like convoluted, like sort of like this would be a nice thing to have done. But then again, I was reading all the time, reading, so it's possible I came across it in the library, like because I was reading a lot of philosophy books in high school. I don't can't can't say for sure, because it's like I've just been submerged in books, you know, books and music in high school, and then um, yeah, uh, so when we get into like the physics, it's what this. If you analyze group velocity, like with Louis de Broglie, you can have a superluminal faster than the speed of light phase velocity. But then they say, well, it's not valid because a phase velocity has to be a continuous wave. And when you have a continuous wave, it can't be quantum. You know, you're it's and it, because of this problem of phase being a wavelength, and but the physicists who talk about that, they they don't know about non-commutativity because non-commutativity is not a continuous wave. It's a discrete algebra, and and so of course then you end up getting in this big debate like what's more important, mathematics or physics, and some people will just dismiss non-commutativity as just being mathematics. And that I had this sort of like debate with, well, there was another physics or philosophy of science professor. Um, she had that reaction to me, and I sent it off to Basil J. Hiley, and he's like, "No, it's not just mathematics." Professor Basil J. Hiley, and so yeah, I got deep enough into the science where I could like pull away the problems of the physics and the math without being just some like new age sort of like superficial whatever, that could just be dismissed because most physicists would just dismiss the paranormal as just being woo woo. And um so the uh Amrita versus Antifa. I was also deep into the activist scene, and the Antifa is really from the what they call black bloc. That was what was called black bloc when I would do protests, and I never liked black bloc because it's like the cops just love black bloc because they want that violence. They're looking for an excuse, to like. I could go into details, but they want to escalate, and then you got to wonder, well, how many of the so-called black bloc protesters are actually like informants, because they wear masks and they're all dressed in black and you don't know who they are. And in the activist scene, you know who everybody is, and you're always paranoid, like who's an FBI informant. I had people think I was an informant. It's like everybody's accusing everybody because that's what COINTELPRO was from the FBI. in Operation Chaos with the CIA. I mean, they weren't supposed to be operating domestically, but they were, and so of course that's the big problem with so-called Antifas that you don't know. First of all, they barely exist even as individuals. The black bloc thing really, I mean, it comes up every once in a while, and you get somebody like John. One of their leaders is the anarchist, deep ecologist guy, and I talked to Noam Chomsky about him because Noam Chomsky's like, "Oh, he lies. He's been lying about me," and I confronted him about it, and he couldn't respond back. He refused. John Zerzan is his name, and he's a big guru in Portland or Eugene. I think he lives in Eugene, but he's been, since the '80s or the or definitely since the shutdown of Seattle. When I was out, I was in Seattle for the shutdown of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. I went out there. I was invited by a activist friend or an acquaintance, and I was at that point in my life where she became my girlfriend, but then my ex-girlfriend came out because she was mad that I broke up with her, and it was like one of those stupid, like college, love triangle things. I literally was like in a bed in a motel room with these two young, beautiful ladies, and I was freaking out about it because one of them was my ex, and the other one was my future girlfriend. That was my Seattle experience because then I was running around dodging rubber bullets, literally just like screaming, running around. And that's what this like ICE is basically like. It's like this shutdown of Seattle was a success because we surprised, the empire or whatever, whether they're bad cops, which would be Republicans, or good cops, which would be Democrats. But it's like I had protested in Chicago in 1996, and I saw a battalion of cops there, and one of them said to me, "We're gonna crack your skulls like we did in '68," you know, against the Democratic National Convention. That's what I was there. I was there protesting the DNC in '96, and so that was my first experience directly. Like, oh, I live in an empire, and the empire can turn domestically. And that's when I coined this phrase, imperial implosion. That's what I called it, imperial implosion. And basically, yeah, so that's what we're experiencing now in the United States. And it's really tragic. I mean, it's horrific that the migrant community that I've worked with, that's part of my family even. And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, there's problems with the, so-called like assimilation or whatever into the US. Um, like sort of like Anglophile culture. There's gonna be a change of culture, when that's just how it is. But yeah, so I don't know what's gonna happen. It's gonna be um it's gonna be messed up for sure. And the problem is that the John Zerzan, he misrepresents the original human culture, the song Bushman, and he totally ignores their spiritual focus. Like the truth of music is this spiritual training as meditation, and he just tries to pretend that that's not happening. But even like the anthropology, academics, they acknowledge it now, or the radical anthropology group. And of course, the followers of John Zerzan, they don't know any better. They don't want to know any better, because you're in Western civilization. You don't want to have to deal with meditation because it's like way too of a purified reality. It's this like hunter gatherer jungle reality.